Welcome to Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree, where we talk about gospel insights through great stories and help you find entertainment that is both true and beautiful. Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree is part of the Public Square Media network of podcasts that seek to bring an LDS perspective into the public square. I'm Carl Cranny. I have a PhD in religion and have written on the intersection of religious themes in pop culture. And I'm joined today by my co-host, Liz Busby.
Hi, I'm Liz Busby. I am a graduate student in English at BYU, a writer of science fiction and fantasy, and a Latter-day Saint. It's been a long time since we came on your podcast feed. We have been busy. Carl broke his knee and moved to Utah.
Sorry about the knee, everybody. I'm doing much better now.
Yeah, and in the meantime, we also became an award-winning podcast. We received the 2023 Podcast Award from the Association for Mormon Letters. Grateful for their recognition. It was really fun. You can see more about that on our website.
I think we'll even pull out a little chunk of their write-up about our podcast because I was really touched by it, and I liked the idea that we are a podcast that says, what if all TV and movies are for Latter-day Saints? What if we can look at all of it through a Latter-day Saint lens? And I thought that was a good insight.
Yeah, we're happy about that.
Today, we are going to talk about 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is one of my all-time favorite science fiction movies, and I noticed that it was being shown at the Harold B. Lee Library Auditorium. We are recording this the evening of Friday, August 9th. We just got out of the showing. This is me and Liz recording together for the first time in person. And she is trying to process this movie that is one of my all-time favorites. I watched this movie on my mission for the first time. On our mission, the rule was you could watch G-rated movies. This was one of the few times that I helped create a mission rule because I think the mission president actually meant like Disney movies. And I took the letter of the law as written, and 2001: Space Odyssey is rated G. That's so we rented it from Blockbuster and watched it repeated one week. And in the mindset of missionary work, where you're always thinking about the gospel all the time, and you're just immersed in talking and speaking about the doctrines of life, the universe, everything, trying to help people understand the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, just being so immersed in that mindset, and then watching this movie was a almost transcendent experience for me. So I'm really curious to get Liz's view now, having just watched this movie for the first time. What did you think of it?
Man, it's given me like 10 minutes of processing time to try to figure out what to think about 2001: A Space Odyssey. I'm reminded of this thread I once read on Twitter of some guy watching Princess Bride for the first time and being like, oh, there's that meme. That's from this movie. Oh, there's that meme. That's from this movie. And of being like, oh, all these things that I know are like tropes. This is where they started. This is where we get the howl. I was like, oh, that's in this movie too. Oh, okay, I get it. And then I was not expecting the trip at the end. Okay, that happened. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how you produce those kind of effects in the 60s. So that was cool to think about while we were traveling through psychedelic.
I remember as we were walking in, I asked you, I said, so when you were watching the Barbie movie, did you get the references to the opening of 2001?
I had heard that it was a reference to that from reading articles and stuff.
Now you have
Now I know.
The cultural touchstone. You can go back and watch Barbie. That was the moment in the Barbie movie where I just was laughing out loud so much that I'm sorry to the rest of the people in the movie theater. I'm having such a fun time watching this movie. We're only 3 minutes in, and I was like, I already love this movie.
I can imagine if you had seen 2001 before, you'd be like, oh, this movie's swinging for the fences. If it's referencing that movie, we are not in for a cute little Barbie movie. We're in for something else.
Something else. Absolutely. And that was what was so fun.
I'm trying to figure out what is going on in this movie. What does the black box symbolize? And obviously you can project almost anything onto that. It reminds me a lot of the one Arthur C. Clarke book I've read. It is a lot about the evolutionary story of humanity, but also about transcendence and there being something beyond humanity, which is interesting because it combines, they started as apes, and then one day an ape picked up a tool and hit things with it and was like, oh, this is cool. And then there was survival of the fittest. You get this very naturalistic story. And then in the middle of it, there's randomly the giant black bog. Yeah, like what? So it's this weird combination of very naturalistic and also very supernatural which is very Arthur C. Clarke.
That's why Arthur C. Clarke is one of my favorite science fiction writers, because he has an almost religious worldview of any sufficiently advanced technology indistinguishable from magic, or the sort of one of the other versions of that is any sufficiently advanced extraterrestrial intelligence would be indistinguishable from God. And so that shows up in spades in this movie, in Childhood's End, like you say, which is also one of my favorite.
It's interesting because then in the second part, I was thinking about, like, why are we doing this classical music now with the space thing? And that seems to be all about human achievement, right? Like when we hear classical music, we think of the pinnacle of culture. It goes with this whole kind of 50s-ish space culture that's going on, that's very neat and orderly and civilized. Oh, would you like to have a drink?
Even talking with the Russians on the space station.
It's like, oh, I'm sorry, we can't talk about that, but how are you doing?
Yeah.
Very polite.
I read one theory that the guy he's talking to is actually a KGB agent, and he's trying to get the down low on what's going on. But they're also, yes, civilized is a good word about all of this. I find it interesting. There's so much in this movie about technology, even the phone call with his daughter, which is just hilarious because you can totally see how you could have a 5-minute conversation with your kid basically about nothing and tell mommy that I called, please, because they didn't have any concept that there would be voicemail or phone waiting or anything like that. But 1,000% sure that girl did not pass the message on to her.
No, 100%.
So despite the fact that we have all this technology, there's still some very human things about how all these characters are interacting with each other in these very boring and mundane ways as they're flying through space.
I kept thinking about how often they make a point to show us the food, too.
Yeah.
It's like we have the apes eating the grass and then eating the tapir creatures, and then have the drinks and liquid meal pack. I was thinking that flight was really great till that part. I was like, no thanks. I'll take my current airline food over liquid meal pack. And then the sandwiches and then the food on the space station. We keep coming back to these mundane things where humans are still human no matter how much technological wrapper you put around them. I think it does that very much on purpose. That very human action of eating your food while you watch the news.
Right. And then, of course, the pinnacle of human technology is HAL. And that doesn't end well for anybody.
Oh, that plays so different now that we literally have AI that's talking to us. It's, okay, we're there. So that was weird to think about when you can go home and talk to your AI right now.
Hopefully it won't try to murder you.
Yeah, that's ideal.
So what did you think of HAL and just all the interactions between him and the other crew members and the newspaper reporters and, I don't know, that whole sort of storyline?
Yeah, it is weird because that's the part that feels most disconnected, and yet that's the part that's kind of the most iconic that everybody knows about, right?
Open the pub bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Everybody knows that part, and it felt like there was this random space murder mystery inserted in this overarching supernatural narrative. I've been trying to wrestle with that.
Then at the end, they get to Jupiter, and there's this monolith floating around among the moons, and he takes this acid trip to Neo-Gothic French, whatever room that is.
Yeah, that's very strange. It almost feels like he's being kept in a cage and studied. Here's your ideal environment, but it's very enclosed and empty and boring. And then he's reborn as Space Baby. I knew about the Space Baby, too. That's classic. I knew that it was coming somewhere. And I was like, where are we going? How do we get to Space Baby? Oh, there it is. I got it. Again, it maps onto Clark's kind of interest in the expansion of the human mind and trying to comprehend infinity and maybe not being able to do unless you move to the next level, which maybe was what was implied by the apes at the beginning, like after they touched the monolith is when they tools. So maybe there's something like that. They're helping us grow the overmind, or from his other book, or some kind of uplift. Uplift is a classic sci-fi trope where the more advanced species helps the lower species reach higher levels of consciousness. So maybe that's what's going on. I don't know.
To think of humanity as having been uplifted. We usually, in the science fiction trope, think of ourselves.
We are the uplifters. We're uplifting the dolphins and the monkeys and the wolves and whatever we feel like. The octopus. That Tchaikovsky.
Yes. Oh man, I just finished the third one in that series just a couple weeks ago.
Oh, we gotta talk about that sometime.
Oh, so interesting. I feel like
That's the Children of Time, Children of Ruin, Children
memory.
of Memory series by Adrian Tchaikovsky.
It's wonderful. And I feel like at this point they've covered just about every kind of intelligence. And it's really interesting.
They all become, these different species of animals become uplifted, but in they're their own kind of intelligence, so they're not completely human. And he does a good job. There are some sci-fi writers who don't do a good job of that, but he does a really good job of figuring out what would an octopus think like? How would it be different?
And then spiders, and then the AI, and the crow.
The crows, man. I wanted more of the crows. Anyway, sorry, we're not talking about that book right now.
But it's a good book. It has some similar themes to this one. But the idea that we humans are the ones who have been uplifted, something came along and said, hey, let's help these guys
are cute. Let's help them. Let's help
them move along. If you read the book, Arthur Clarke does explain a lot of things more.
Okay.
But I think that the book stands on its own and the movie stands on its own. And you shouldn't conflate Arthur Clarke's explanations of what's going on with Stanley Kubrick's, who was notoriously tight-lipped about what this all meant.
I'm not surprised in one bit about that.
Yeah, he went to his grave. I don't know. What do you think it means? Sounds good to me. Is a good way to approach art in general. The interpretation you have can be and maybe should be just as valid as whatever the artist intended.
He's definitely the kind of creator who works that way. He wants to create something that's an opaque and interesting symbol and not tell a direct meaning, right? He's a stained glass window artist. Look at this cool thing I made. Doesn't matter if it means anything. Not like a picture window artist where it's look at what's happening here. And that's what the focus is on. So his focus is on the window and not in the necessarily understanding the narrative.
Right. No, I like that. And you point out, I think the main moment in this movie that captures that sort of approach is just, here is a black monolith. You can project whatever you want onto it because it's just,
it's literally a black box.
Just a black monolith. It's a black box. It's a symbol. But it's so vague that you could just do anything you want with it. And that is the power of it. And so I just find this movie really interesting for that reason. We're trying to make this a short one, so I'll tell you what Elder Cranny picked up when he was watching this. And I mostly still believe it, even having read the book and seen more what Arthur Clarke intended. This is actually based on a short story by Arthur Clarke, The Sentinel, which I'm sure you could all find online and read in 5 minutes. It would be worth your time. But to me, the monoliths, you can project anything onto them, but I projected God onto them. Because I'm one of those people who believes, and I could be wrong, don't quote me on this, that Adam and Eve were like the first ensouled hominids, right? And that's...
You and Hugh Nibley, so
right. There's plenty of people. I think President Irene's dad is among the people who believe that. So we could be wrong, but it's one of the sort of interpretations of these things. And the monkeys encounter this thing that helps them become bigger and smarter and tool using and all those sorts of things. And you'll notice that there are chapters in the movie. There isn't a chapter break between the monkeys and all of the stuff with the monolith on the moon.
Yeah.
That's part of the same chapter.
I kept expecting, they use the tools to attack the other monkeys. So obviously the space station they're going to use to attack the Russians or something.
Right.
No.
Yeah. But these are all the tools that humans have used. But then we show the limitations, even having been uplifted by the monolith or God or whatever. There's only so far we can go with our own ingenuity, with the resources that have now been given to us. In the end, we create this really intelligent machine that goes a little crazy and murders 405 people on the spaceship with him.
Mm-hmm. And both can be dangerous.
Right. And that, to me, is where the murder mystery fits in.
Okay.
Is the showing the limitations of the tools. Even this tool, a tool we can create as powerful and interesting and wonderful as Hal.
We can't create something perfect that can't make a mistake. It can't actually do that.
Yeah. And so then when Bowman gets to Jupiter and is taken further out into space, and maybe this is where Elder Tobo, who came into the movie at the point of the acid trip through space, and there's a whole sequence where at the end where they're flying over desert vistas. He's all right, now we're going by Lake Powell.
I know. I was like, yeah, alien landscape, Utah. We know we were aliens.
But then he said, now we have some lakes. So this was down Utah Lake, and now we're at Great Salt Lake. And now we ended up in, and I'm sure this was absolutely not intended by Stanley Kubrick, but this is pop culture on the apricot you, so you knew what we were when you picked us up. And then he ended up in the Salt Lake Temple.
It doesn't match the Rococo kind of thing that's going on there.
And then through whatever experience he is having, he moves on to the next phase, which itself is a child, like a space fetus, and which still indicates there's so much more to go. And so I read the whole thing as an allegory of God helping mankind move along. You can insert aliens if you'd like, but on my mission, it was clear, even if it is aliens, it speaks to the sensibility of God helping us progress, which is very Latter-day Saint view.
I don't think that's a stretch at all. I think that's pretty reasonable. I think he does leave it open to that kind of interpretation. And that's the same thing that happens in childhood. And that's a theme he's playing with. It doesn't really matter whether it's God, whether it's aliens. There is some kind of thing that's beyond rationality, that's beyond the mundane everyday world. And we have to reach out to that. He was really interested in mediums and Ouija boards, that kind of spiritualism stuff, and expanding the human mind in those kinds of. So I think supernatural interpretation is absolutely valid. I don't think you're crazy. Or I don't think Elder Cranny was crazy.
Yeah, but I really enjoyed the experience, even though it's a very weird and a very slow movie.
Yeah, definitely watching as a person used to modern theatrical cinema is a little tough. I was remembering my experience as a BYU undergrad watching Solaris, the Russian film at International Cinema, and I was like, oh, this is the same kind of cinema. It's like real slow, long shots, not lots of emotion on people's faces.
Right.
We're not going to reveal their thoughts to you. You're just going to have to stare at their face and wonder. And he does a lot of techniques like that where Dave is always staring directly into the camera, breaking the fourth wall for us. I suppose Hal is too. Technically, he's also staring into the fourth wall.
That's right.
So we're looking into his eyes, and I guess we're almost like he's a mirror to us, because he doesn't seem to be looking at us so much as like we're projecting ourselves into him.
Sure. I like that a lot as well.
Yeah, but definitely different kind of cinema. You have to be ready for the 2.5 hours with the break.
That's weird, because for me, having seen the movie before, as knowing what was coming, it felt too fast for me. Like I wanted to dwell a little longer on the apes just wandering around, eating and picking lice off of each other. And just the beauty of space flights, which wasn't really happening at the time.
Yeah.
Pre-landing on the moon, but, and this is one of my complaints about a lot of science fiction, of course, is they don't understand how big space is.
Yeah.
And so the Enterprise gets shot down to the moon and immediately crashes to Earth. I'm like, no, it would take it 3 days to fall to the Earth. This is not.
That's no fun, Carl.
I know, but it just...
We also want our space guns to go pew, okay?
Yeah, and there's no sound. It's very scientifically accurate. But it takes him forever to go get Frank's body after Hal murders him. It just takes forever to do, and shows that even though at this point it's flying towards Jupiter probably faster than any other spaceship that's ever been made in this timeline,
it still takes a really
long time to get to Jupiter.
Well, and I think it works well with this style of movie because it gives you that time to think. Process and wonder what someone's thinking and wonder why the director did what they did. So it's not meant to be an experience where you forget you're watching a movie. You're supposed to know that you're looking at a piece of art, like stained glass window, like I said. Like You're supposed to know that this is a piece of art intentionally made by someone.
Yeah.
Not forget.
It was one of the first movies I ever encountered that I thought was a work of art, telling a story through a visual motion medium, if that makes sense.
No, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my God, I didn't know movies could do this sort of thing. But they can. And I think to good effect in this case. Any final thoughts? I enjoyed the movie. I'm glad Liz at least mostly enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, no, I'm glad I saw it. It's definitely worth watching. Don't try to show it to young kids who are going to be bored out of their mind, even though it's rated G.
Right. No, it's true. That is true. And it's a good point to make. The rating system, there's nothing offensive in this. But this is definitely not a movie for children. You would need to have a certain maturity to even begin.
And a certain interest in the art of filmmaking, I think. I wouldn't show it to a teenager unless that teenager was interested in film. And then I'd be like, oh, let's watch this. And you can learn about the way he makes a movie and watch how it's put together. Because that's what you're doing a lot of the time, because there's not a lot happening on the screen. You're spending your time thinking, like, why this shot? Why this music? Why this? Why are we repeating this image of the sun and the moon?
Yeah. Which, by the way, is for those of you who can go to Facebook, the image of the monolith and the sun from the apes is my current Facebook cover photo. So this movie, I guess, is important to some of my weird intellectual development, but there you go. Thank you for joining us for this Pop Culture on the Apricot Tree short. We encourage you to seek after everything virtuous, lovely, of good report, or praiseworthy, and we will see you next time.
Bye.